Flight MH370, the plane that vanished. 239 souls. No wreckage. No answers. The mystery that still haunts the world. Imagine this. A plane vanishes from the sky with 239 souls on board. No distress call. No wreckage. Just silence. And in the decades since, it remains one of the greatest aviation mysteries of all time. The night was calm. March 8, 2014. Malaysia Airlines Flight MH370 prepared for a routine journey from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing. It was supposed to be uneventful, just another red-eye flight across Southeast Asia. The Boeing 777 was one of the most reliable aircraft in the world. The weather was clear. The pilots were experienced. Everything was normal, until it wasn't. At 12:41 a.m., the plane took off from Kuala Lumpur International Airport. On board were 227 passengers and 12 crew members. Families, business travelers, students, people heading home, people heading to new beginnings. No one suspected that within the hour, they would all disappear. For the first 38 minutes of the flight, everything seemed fine. The aircraft climbed steadily, cruising smoothly above the South China Sea. At 1:19 a.m., the last words were transmitted from the cockpit. A calm voice said, "Good night, Malaysian 370. It sounded routine, almost casual, but just 2 minutes later, the aircraft vanished from civilian radar. Authorities were confused. There was no mayday call, no signal of technical failure, no indication of hijacking. It simply dropped off the screen. The plane's transponder, the device that communicates with air traffic control, had been deliberately switched off. At that exact moment, MH370 became invisible. What makes this story chilling is what happened next. Military radar, unlike civilian radar, picked up the aircraft making a sharp turn. Instead of continuing toward Beijing, the plane turned west, back over Malaysia. It then headed northwest across the Malacca Strait. For hours, it flew silently, without communication, over one of the most heavily monitored airspaces in the world. And no one stopped it. Imagine the cockpit, the passengers, the silence. For more than 6 hours after it vanished, the plane was still airborne. Satellites detected handshakes, automated signals from the aircraft systems, confirming it was still flying somewhere over the Indian Ocean. But where exactly? No one knew. When families gathered in Beijing that morning, expecting to welcome loved ones, they were instead told the plane was missing. Confusion turned into chaos. Some believed it had crashed. Others thought it was hijacked. The world's media erupted. How can modern aircraft, equipped with advanced navigation systems, simply vanish in 2014? Search efforts began immediately. Dozens of ships and aircraft from multiple countries scoured the seas. But they found nothing. Not a single seat cushion. Not a single piece of luggage. It was as though the plane had been swallowed whole by the ocean. Then came the theories. Some believed it was a mechanical failure, though experts argued that pilots would have had time to issue a distress call. Others thought it was a deliberate act, a hijacking, or worse, pilot suicide. Some even suggested it was a political conspiracy involving sensitive cargo or foreign powers. With every day that passed without answers, the theories grew darker. In 2015, a breakthrough came. A piece of debris washed ashore on Réunion Island, thousands of miles away from the suspected crash zone. It was part of a wing, confirmed to be from MH370. Over the following years, more fragments were discovered along the coastlines of Africa and the Indian Ocean islands. But these pieces only deepened the mystery. If the plane really went down in the southern Indian Ocean, why was the wreckage so scattered? And why was no major debris field ever found? The official investigation concluded that the plane most likely ended its journey in remote waters west of Australia. But the exact location of the wreckage remains unknown. Despite the largest search operation in aviation history, spanning over 120,000 square kilometers of ocean, the fuselage, the black boxes, and the truth have never been recovered. The climax of this story is chilling. 239 people boarded that flight, and to this day, no one knows for certain what happened in its final hours. Did the passengers know they were off course? Did they sit in fear as the aircraft flew into oblivion? Or were they unconscious, victims of a slow and silent cabin depressurization? The disappearance of Flight MH370 remains unsolved. Families of the victims still demand answers, desperate for closure. The aviation community continues to debate what went wrong. And even now, when planes carry advanced satellite tracking, this case serves as a haunting reminder. Sometimes, even in our modern world, things can simply vanish. So what do you think? Was MH370 a tragic accident, or something far more sinister? If you were on that plane, would you have sensed something was wrong? And most importantly, will we ever truly know the truth? They found fragments, pieces of a wing, a torn panel, shards of the plane scattered across distant shores. But the wreck itself gone, the black boxes silent. And so, the world was left with only questions. If Flight MH370 really plunged into the Indian Ocean, why has the sea kept it secret for so long? Theories began to spread like wildfire. Some are grounded in science, others in fear, a few in outright paranoia. But every single one pointed to the same haunting question. What exactly happened that night after the words "Good night, Malaysian 370" echoed across the radio waves for the last time? The first theory is depressurization. Experts suggest that a sudden loss of cabin pressure could have rendered everyone on board unconscious. If the pilots failed to put on their oxygen masks in time, they too would have blacked out. The plane, still flying on autopilot, would have continued until its fuel ran dry, eventually plunging into the ocean. It's a simple explanation. Logical, yet leaves gaps. Why was the transponder deliberately turned off? Why did the aircraft change course so dramatically? Mechanical failures don't flip switches. Humans do. This leads to the second theory, pilot involvement. Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah was a veteran with over 18,000 flying hours. To his friends, he was calm and professional. But investigators discovered something chilling. On his home computer, Zahari had used a flight simulator to plot a route eerily similar to MH370's final suspected path, out over the remote Indian Ocean, ending in empty water. Was it practice for a suicide mission? Or was it just a coincidence, the kind of data a pilot might experiment with casually? Authorities could never prove intent. His family insists he would never harm his passengers. And yet, the shadows of doubt remain. Another theory points to hijacking. Some believe terrorists or rogue actors could have seized control of the aircraft, but no group ever claimed responsibility. In most cases of hijacking, there are demands, announcements, or at least some trace of motive. Here, there was only silence. No messages, no warnings. If it was hijacking, it was the strangest one in history. Then comes the military theory. The idea that MH370 was mistaken for a hostile aircraft, perhaps carrying suspicious cargo, and was shot down by a nation's defense system. This would explain the lack of communication and the evasive search efforts. But again, no solid proof. No radar evidence. No whistleblower testimony. Just whispers and suspicion. And yet, the most bizarre theories gained the loudest voices. Some said the plane was captured and hidden, that it landed secretly in a remote location, perhaps in Central Asia, that the passengers were alive, held in secrecy for unknown reasons. Others suggested advanced technology, black holes, time slips, even extraterrestrial abductions. The desperation for answers was so intense, people turned to anything that could fill the void. But there are details that still don't sit right. The military radar tracks show the plane flying strange, erratic turns, as if under human control. It passed over Penang, the captain's hometown, almost as though he was taking one last look. Then it headed out into the void. If this was autopilot, why such a path? If this was a hijacker, why such silence? If this was a desperate pilot, why bring 238 other lives into the abyss? The families of the victims live with this torment. Every theory cuts differently. If it was accident, it means their loved ones died quickly, unknowingly. If it was deliberate, it means there was betrayal in the cockpit. And if it was something darker, something hidden, it means the truth was stolen from them. In 2018, the official search was called off. The government declared MH370 a tragic accident, but could not explain the cause. Independent search teams continued to push forward, using sonar, deep-sea drones, and advanced mapping. Yet every dive comes back empty. The ocean refuses to give up its secrets. And here lies the climax of the mystery. A modern plane, with GPS, satellites, communication systems, radar coverage, and thousands of eyes in the sky. And still, it vanished. In an age when your smartphone can track your steps, when satellites can photograph cars on highways, how can an entire Boeing 777 disappear without a trace? It is almost as if someone wanted it to vanish. The story of MH370 is not just about one plane. It is about fragility, about how little control we really have, even in our advanced world. It shows that human technology, no matter how sophisticated, can still fail, or be fooled, or be manipulated. The case remains open. Theories multiply, but closure never comes. Families wait, the world waits, and the Indian Ocean holds its silence. So I'll ask you, which theory do you believe? Was MH370 a tragic accident, a crime hidden in plain sight, or something none of us can yet imagine? The official search for Flight MH370 became the largest and most expensive in aviation history. More than 24 countries joined forces. Billions of dollars were spent. Sophisticated sonar scans mapped the ocean floor in ways never done before. And yet, what they found was not answers, but silence. The wreckage remained hidden. From the beginning, the investigation was clouded by confusion and contradictions. Authorities in Malaysia were accused of withholding information, delaying announcements, and mismanaging communication. Families of the victims complained that they learned more from media leaks than from official briefings. Some relatives were even sent text messages, cold words on a phone screen, to tell them their loved ones were presumed dead. The trust between families and governments quickly crumbled. One of the most controversial issues was the timeline. It took hours before Malaysia Airlines officially acknowledged the plane was missing. Even then, their statements kept changing. At first, they claimed MH370 was last detected over the South China Sea. Later, they admitted the plane had flown west across Malaysia. Days later, they revealed satellite handshakes that showed the aircraft flying for hours longer than anyone first believed. Why was the truth revealed in fragments? Were authorities confused, or were they hiding something? Then came the satellite data. Investigators relied on Inmarsat, a British satellite company, which tracked MH370 through automated signals known as pings. These pings allowed experts to calculate two possible arcs, one heading north towards Central Asia and one heading south into the Indian Ocean. But only the southern route was investigated. Critics argued that the northern path was ignored too quickly. Was the decision political, or simply practical, given the vastness of the northern terrain? For the families, the uncertainty was unbearable. Some clung to hope that their loved ones were alive, perhaps held somewhere in secret. Others demanded proof that the plane had truly crashed. Without bodies, without wreckage, closure was impossible. Every day was a cycle of hope and despair. The discovery of debris years later should have brought relief. But instead, it sparked more anger. Most pieces were found not by governments, but by locals and independent searchers. A flapper on Réunion Island. Interior panel fragments in Mozambique and Madagascar. Personal items washed up on African shores. Each discovery raised a haunting question. If individuals could find debris, why couldn't entire nations with ships and planes locate the main wreck? Conspiracies grew louder. Some believed governments knew more than they admitted, that sensitive cargo was on board, possibly military equipment, that made MH370 the target of a cover-up. Others whispered about intelligence operations, secret landings, and hidden motives. The lack of transparency fueled these theories. Every silence became suspicious. Every delay became evidence of lies. But beyond the theories were the human stories. Parents waiting for children who would never return. Children asking why their mothers or fathers never came home. Wives and husbands living in limbo, trapped between grief and denial. In hotel conference rooms, families gathered for updates, sometimes collapsing in tears, sometimes shouting in rage at officials who gave them nothing but vague answers. Their pain became part of the tragedy. Perhaps the most haunting image came years later. Relatives holding vigils with 239 candles, one for each passenger and crew member. The flames flickered in the night, fragile, temporary, and uncertain. Just like the truth. The climax of the investigation was not discovery, it was failure. After nearly 4 years, the official search was suspended in 2017. Governments declared the wreck likely lay somewhere in the Indian Ocean, but without evidence, their words felt hollow. A private search in 2018 tried again, using advanced underwater drones, but returned empty-handed. Once more, silence. And so the mystery deepened. What really happened that night? Did officials withhold information to avoid embarrassment, or to protect something bigger? Was MH370 a tragedy of mechanical failure, or was it entangled in something far more sinister? The unanswered questions keep this case alive. A plane doesn't just disappear. A black box doesn't stay hidden forever. And 239 lives don't vanish without a trace, unless someone, somewhere, wanted it that way. To this day, the disappearance of MH370 remains one of the darkest enigmas in modern history. An investigation that promised answers delivered only confusion. Families who begged for truth were given fragments. And the world learned that even with satellites above us and radars around us, the sky can still swallow secrets. So what do you think? Were the authorities simply overwhelmed, or was there something they never wanted us to see? If you were one of the families, would you still hold on to hope, or accept the silence? Imagine waiting for a phone call that never comes. Watching the door, hoping it opens. For the families of Flight MH370, every day since March 8, 2014, has been a day suspended in time. The plane is gone. The passengers are gone. And the answers still missing. The psychological impact has been devastating. Some relatives refuse to accept that their loved ones are dead. They leave bedrooms untouched. They keep phone numbers active. They send messages, voicemails, even emails, believing, somehow, that the missing will read them. For others, grief has taken a darker turn. Anger, distrust, and obsession. Many accuse governments of lies, of cover-ups, of abandoning the search too soon. And can you blame them? When 239 lives vanish without a clear explanation, suspicion is all that remains. In Beijing, family members protested outside government buildings, holding banners with their loved ones' faces, demanding answers. In Malaysia, vigils turned into confrontations with officials. People begged, screamed, and cried, only to be met with silence. For years, their grief played out in front of cameras. The world watched as ordinary families were transformed into activists, detectives, and mourners, trapped in an endless cycle of hope and despair. But the story of MH370 goes beyond grief. It exposed terrifying vulnerabilities in modern aviation. How could a Boeing 777, one of the safest planes ever built, vanish in the 21st century? How could radar and satellites fail to track it? How could governments lose control of the skies so easily? The disappearance forced the aviation industry to confront an uncomfortable truth. Our systems were not as secure as we believed. In the aftermath, rules changed. Airlines were pressured to improve real-time tracking of aircraft. New systems were designed to send automatic distress signals, even if pilots didn't activate them. Black box batteries were extended to last longer. The industry promised never again. But for the families of MH370, these changes came too late. And then came the eerie coincidences. Less than 5 months after MH370 disappeared, another Malaysia Airlines flight, MH17, was shot down over Ukraine by a surface-to-air missile. Once again, headlines screamed about Malaysia Airlines. Once again, lives were lost. To many, it felt cursed, as though the airline itself was marked by tragedy. For families still waiting for MH370's return, It was another cruel reminder of the fragility of life in the sky. But some coincidences are more chilling. Years after the disappearance, strange stories began to surface. Passenger cell phones still ringing days after the flight vanished. Families claimed to hear the familiar buzz when they dialed loved ones' numbers. Was a glitch in the network? Or evidence the phones were still on, somewhere? Investigators dismissed these accounts, but to the grieving, they were signs of life. There were also reports of strange military exercises that night, in the same region MH370 flew across. Some believe the plane may have stumbled into restricted airspace and paid the price. Others point to unconfirmed satellite images, supposed wreckage floating in the ocean, which later disappeared from reports. Were these errors in data, or deliberate erasures? The longer the mystery lingered, the more it became a symbol. MH370 was no longer just a plane. It became the embodiment of uncertainty in the modern world. It reminded us that no matter how advanced our technology, no matter how powerful our governments, there are still shadows we cannot control. It became a story people whispered about on long flights. The question that haunted every passenger staring out of a dark airplane window. Could it happen again? For the families, the legacy is different. Their lives are divided into two halves, before the disappearance and after. Some have devoted themselves to activism, demanding continued searches. Others have retreated into silence, unable to carry the weight of unanswered grief. Children have grown up without parents. Parents have grown old without children. The absence of truth becomes a wound that never heals. The climax of this chapter is not a single event, but the weight of time. Days became months. Months became years. 10 years have now passed, and still the ocean holds its secret. Every anniversary brings candles, vigils, and speeches, but no wreckage, no black boxes, no closure. And this is what makes the disappearance of MH370 more than just an aviation mystery. It is a human mystery, a wound in history that refuses to close. It forces us to ask painful questions about trust, about truth, about what we owe the victims of tragedy. The case remains unsolved. Some believe answers lie just beneath the waves, waiting for new technology to uncover them. Others believe the truth is hidden in files locked away by governments. And some fear the truth may never come, that MH370 will remain forever as it is now, a ghost in the sky. So I'll ask you, if your loved one had been on that flight, would you accept the official story, or would you keep searching until the very end? Some mysteries refuse to die. Some questions linger like shadows in the night. Flight MH370 is one of those mysteries. Years have passed. Investigations have ended. Searches have ceased. Yet, the world still asks, what happened to the plane? Where are the 239 people who boarded that Boeing 777 on March 8, 2014? By now, almost every theory has been proposed. Yet none have been proven. Some are plausible, some are terrifying, and some are almost unthinkable. The Southern Indian Ocean remains the leading theory, the so-called final resting place of the plane. But even that is based on scattered debris and satellite pings. Not the main wreckage, not the black boxes, not the answers the families have been desperate for. One chilling theory suggests pilot suicide. Investigators pointed to Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah's personal flight simulator, where routes ending in the middle of the Indian Ocean were plotted. The theory claims he deliberately diverted the plane, turning it into a silent, flying tomb. But how could someone execute such a plan with total secrecy? And why leave the passengers alive for hours while the plane drifted across the sky? And why has no definitive evidence ever emerged? No note, no confession, nothing but speculation. Another theory delves into hijacking. Perhaps a group of people seized control of the cockpit. Perhaps there was a terrorist motive, perhaps a political one. Yet no group ever claimed responsibility. No messages were sent. No ransom demanded. And if the plane had been taken somewhere secret, why has no trace been found? Every hint of conspiracy fades when faced with the ocean silence. Some of the more bizarre ideas are almost unthinkable. UFO abductions, alien interventions, secret landings, and hidden military bases. In the absence of evidence, the human mind tends to invent possibilities. Perhaps these ideas seem absurd, yet they speak to the depth of the mystery, a world where logic fails, where technology is powerless, and where imagination becomes a lifeline for those seeking answers. The ocean itself is one of the most terrifying factors. Over 120,000 square kilometers were searched, yet the wreckage remains elusive. Underwater currents could scatter debris across thousands of miles. Wreckage could sink into trenches where even the most advanced sonar cannot reach. And while fragments wash ashore, the plane itself seems to be swallowed entirely. The vastness of the ocean turns the disappearance into a haunting, almost impossible puzzle. Global obsession has grown around MH370. Documentaries, books, podcasts, and online forums dissect every detail. Every piece of debris is scrutinized. Every satellite ping is analyzed. Amateur sleuths propose new crash sites, new conspiracies, new timelines. Social media debates rage endlessly. The story has become more than a plane. It is a cultural phenomenon, a modern legend of the sky, a cautionary tale of human vulnerability. For families, the obsession is personal. Every news article, every new theory, every failed search rekindles hope and anguish. Anniversaries are marked with candles, speeches, and prayers. Children grow up knowing their parents' fate is unresolved. Loved ones vanish in memory alone, leaving only questions behind. For some, the mystery consumes their lives entirely. For others, it is a quiet, persistent ache. The climax of the story is in its persistence. In an age of satellites, real-time tracking, and global communication, Flight MH370 remains invisible. Technology fails where human intention or nature's vastness intervenes. The plane is gone. The people are gone. And the world is left watching the ocean, hoping, speculating, grieving. Even today, new theories emerge. Could advanced military technology have been involved? Could secret agreements between nations hide the truth? Could MH370 have been intentionally diverted for reasons we will never understand? And if the plane is eventually found, will the answers satisfy or only deepen the darkness of the mystery? The unresolved nature of MH370 is what makes it truly haunting. It is not just an aviation tragedy. It is a story of absence, of silence, of human limits. It is a reminder that even in our modern, connected, technologically advanced world, some things remain beyond our reach. The sky is no longer safe. The ocean is no longer predictable. And the truth may never arrive. So, I leave you with the final question. Will MH370 ever be found? Are the 239 souls truly gone? Or is there a hidden truth we cannot yet see? And if you were one of those passengers drifting across the sky, would anyone ever hear your story? The plane vanished. The world continues to search. The mystery endures.